With this machine, you can do a variety of changes to just a basic satin stitch. So this satin stitch S, I was playing around with it, showing the basting in the hoop option. So it was a basting stitch around the letter, which was nice because I kind of had this fabric I had just laid down on my stabilizer. But then let me show you how you can change a satin stitch into kind of a step stitch. And then this one, we changed the density. So right here, we made it really, really thick. You can tell it's almost, well, it is. It's twice as thick. If you ever had some stitching area that wasn't filling in all the way, you could increase the amount of stitches that the machine will stitch in an area. Now over here, as you can see, it's a little less stitched, so there's not so much perforation. So if you had something that you needed to kind of lighten up how many stitches are in there, we took this down to like 30%. So let me show you where you do each of these options for the design. So when you're in the machine, I've gone ahead and pulled up my letter, and you'll go ahead and go into the I for information and go down to altering the stitch density. So the first one, if I go ahead and turn this on, this will allow you to change, for example, a satin stitch down to a shorter stitch length. So you can kind of see 8 millimeters. That's pretty long. So if I use the top knob here, you'll see it reduced down. You could also do it with the minus sign. So that means that the longest stitch it will stitch would be 6 millimeters. So if you wanted it even smaller, like half the distance, you can go for like 4 millimeters. So you can do with the plus or minus or turn the knob. So that means every time it goes 4 millimeters, it's going to take a stitch. And that's what kind of gave this little look of a little line in the middle, because that was the distance that we were working with to start with. So if you, sometimes when I make this letter much, much bigger and the satin stitch is a lot wider, that means that you're going to have more stitches back and forth. And which is nice, because if that was a long satin stitch, sometimes you can get your finger underneath it, you can catch jewelry on it like a ring, and then it snags the stitch and pulls out. So anytime I start to get long satin stitches, I like to switch it over to more of a filled stitch, and you can do that right on screen now, not have to have embroidery software separately from the machine. You can do it internally. Okay, so that was the top one. This bottom one is where you can, if you plus, that's going to add stitches, make it denser, or if you go the other way, if I went all the way down to 30%, again, you can turn it faster than you can push the minus sign. So if you go 30%, that's going to really open up and kind of leave some gaps. So at the right time, that's going to be the correct thing to do, is to not have it stitch out so dense. Even too, sometimes by reducing the density, you don't have it as much stitch count, doesn't take as long, but still might look just as good. And you could come in and alter that just a little bit and kind of speed up some of your embroidery time. So once you're here, then you can go ahead, it kind of recalculates your stitches. A lot of times when you go into the sewing screen, you'll notice how many stitches have been added or reduced in the density area, and also too how many stitches, because this doubled the amount of stitches. So if this was like 500 stitches, now it's 1,000 stitches, because it's taking one extra stitch in the middle each time that it goes. But it's actually a more secure embroidery versus the satin stitch. This is probably okay because it's not too wide, but anything wider starts to get a little bit where you can kind of pull on it accidentally. So try out your densities in the I for information area.